Hey everybody, today we're going to make the best hamburger steak and potatoes you have ever had. If there ever was a quintessential comfort meal, comfort food, this has got to be it. It is meat, it is potatoes, it is full of flavor. You're going to love it. First, go ahead and crack open an egg and give that a good whisk. You can see a list of ingredients and measurements in the description below, so you don't have to write those down. Next, we are going to add a heavy pinch of salt. I like to use kosher salt, but the choice is yours. Then add a tablespoon of oregano. And a tablespoon of garlic powder. You can use a couple of cloves of fresh garlic minced if you prefer, but the garlic powder works pretty well here too. Now go ahead and give a little bit of black pepper. I like the kind that you grind. It adds a lot more flavor than the pre-ground stuff. Now here's a secret to make this light and fluffy. Add about a half cup of Panko breadcrumbs. And then we'll add a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. Panko breadcrumbs are not just breadcrumbs. They're made by applying the dough to a screen and then cooking the screen with the dough on it and then scraping the breadcrumbs off. It makes a much different texture than just plain old breadcrumbs. Now, just added the secret recipe that would be onion soup mix. It can be Lipton, it can be any brand, but the onion soup slash dip mix makes this dish. Without it, I don't know what you would have, but that is not anything you can substitute here. Now go ahead and add about a pound of ground beef. At first, you don't want to mash this in. Just sort of separate it, give it a good stir, but loosen the individual grounds of ground beef so that all of the flavor, the mixture that we just created can really mix well and get in every part of the meat. Later, we'll press these together into burgers, but now we just want the flavor to mix well. You don't have to do this, but I like to spread the meat and mixture out on a cutting board. Notice I'm using a different cutting board. I do not allow meat to touch my wood cutting board. It makes it very difficult to clean and sanitize. And I've got 3 people to feed tonight, so I am mixing this into 3 different patties. Notice how I will push it down. This, we want to have the meat pressed firmly, but not overly firmly. If we were going to be throwing these on the grill where they would have high heat and we would be flipping them, I would want to press these a lot harder, but it's a medium firm press just to get them in shape. Pat them. You can certainly make these into smaller portions if you like. Now check out those beautifully formed patties. Next, go ahead and add a little bit of olive oil to whatever pan you're using. I like to use a cast iron pan for this, cast iron skillet, whatever you want to call it. It has a lot of heat disbursement ability opposed to, say, an aluminum or steel pan, or a lot of pans are aluminum in the middle, steel on the outside. The cast iron spreads the heat out much more evenly, and they're pretty much indestructible. So give those about 3 or 4 minutes on each side, and then carefully give them a flip. Keep in mind, we did not press these very hard like you would do for a burger on the grill. So be careful when you're flipping them. They could fall apart pretty easily on you. And next, we're going to go ahead and dice up an onion. First, I like to cut off the top and bottom and go ahead and peel the top 2 layers. That flaky skin is the first, and then the second is kind of a sticky little layer. Go ahead and get rid of the extra. This is not the chefy way of dicing an onion, but it works for me. I like to slice it right down the middle. And then go ahead and make it into thin slices, about a 1/4 inch or so. That works really well for me. And then we'll turn it onto its side and then chop it up. So I know there's some chefs out there that are going to balk at this, but by God, it works. It's easy. It's effective. And for whatever reason, the middle part of your knife seems to chop best for this. I really don't know why. You can use a white onion, Spanish yellow onion, Vidalia onion, whatever you have on hand will all work well here. Side note, if you use Vidalia onions, just know it is nothing but a yellow Spanish onion grown in Vidalia, Georgia, or the surrounding 4 or 5 counties. That region has a very, very low sulfur content, and it does make the onions really sweet consistently. Is it the best onion? I don't know, but they do make a really good product, and they do market their product extremely well. Now go ahead and take the patty's temperature. 165 degrees is what you want for it to be fully cooked to kill all the nasties that could be in the meat. Now remember, you will have carryover temperature. So if you get it up to about 155, 160, you're golden. Plus we're going to put these back into some sauce and cook them longer. So if you're not quite at 165, don't worry about it. We will get there eventually. In some gravy recipes, you would want to use all these little bits of things still in the pan, but that's not what we're doing here. So go ahead and wipe it down. You don't have to wash it. Just wipe out the hard bits and go ahead and put 2 large pats of butter in and let that melt. Go ahead and spread the butter around. And folks, don't use a knife like I'm doing. That's about the worst thing you could do here to scratch up your pan. Now go ahead and add your onions. We're going to saute those a little bit. Well, that's better. I'm using a silicone spatula. Probably not the best, but hey, it works. And go ahead and give it a good pinch of kosher salt. I like kosher salt better than just the regular stuff. Give that a good stir. We want to caramelize these onions a bit. That's when the sugars in the onion start to brown or caramelize. Next, we add the flour. Now, we add the oil first so that the flour can coat every little molecule of flour. If not, the flour will never thicken and it will clump whatever you add it to. Flour and oil mixed together, or any fat and flour mixed together, is called a roux. You'll see that commonly in Cajun cooking or French cooking. And in this case, I did not add enough fat to start with to cover all of the flour evenly or enough. So I just added about a tablespoon of olive oil, and that will be sufficient to, just make a brown goo is what it really looks like at this point. Not real appetizing, but that's what we want. So just keep giving that a little stir. You can even brown the flour. It's very, very common in Cajun. Next, go ahead and add in 2 cups of beef broth. You can use chicken broth here if you have it on hand. That's fine. The vegetable broth just doesn't add a lot of flavor. Keep in mind when you're using flour as a thickener, flour will not thicken any liquid until it's very close to boiling. So just keep stirring until that comes to a boil. Now we're going to add a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. And keep stirring until this thickens. You don't have to stir constantly, but now go ahead and add in some fresh ground pepper. I much prefer the type that you grind directly from the can. Releases a lot more of the pepper oils as opposed to something that's pre-ground and you just sprinkle in. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and chop up some parsley. This is Italian parsley. There are multiple types of parsley, but you know, whatever your favorite is. This is more of a garnish than anything. It doesn't really add a lot of flavor when we sprinkle on top, but it does look good in the presentation. So it's worth a little bit of extra effort. So just let that boil. This is probably too high of a boil, so bring the heat down and let it simmer. I just added a little pinch of kosher salt. You don't want to have too much. You can always add more, but you can't take any out. And if you like, go ahead and give it a taste. The flavor is incredible at this point. And gently add in your patties. We're going to let these simmer for a while. Probably 10 minutes or so. Now, I like to scoop some of the gravy on top of the patties, get them all nice and coated. Let some of that moisture seep in. It's going to make a much more moist patty than what you already have. And now we get to plate. For the base, we're going to use mashed potatoes. If you haven't already seen it, be sure to check out our video called My Friends Call It Potato Crack. Seriously, they are that good. I have a friend that refers to these as potato crack because they're that addictive. So just spread out a bed of mashed potatoes, put one of your patties on top, and we'll get some of this amazingly delicious gravy. Just ladle that up. Pour it out. You don't have to pour it out from this height. I did that just for dramatic effect. I think it looks pretty good. And then we're going to sprinkle some of our parsley on top. Now, doesn't that look good, folks? This will be absolutely a delicious meal, I promise. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. And enjoy.